The views and opinions heard on this show do not necessarily reflect the views of the host.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Real Spiritual Talk Radio.
My breathing had stopped for so long that my heart actually ended up stopping.
You saw what I did. You said that I was going to die.
And then I remember being gone. I wasn't there anymore.
I sort of lifted up about 6 feet above my body.
A pinprick of light appeared and came rushing toward me faster than the speed of light.
And then this light, all of a sudden it was all completely around me.
He says, I am God. Yes, I am real.
The main message was loving yourself and loving others.
It was clearly shown to me.
It was really hard to put into words. It felt like I had been there before.
It was just this very personal, impersonal, unconditional love.
Welcome back to another edition of Real Spiritual Talk Radio. I am your host, Lamont Gates, once again bringing you the world of faith, metaphysicality, and spirituality. Today, my guest was able to retrieve in her near-death experience information concerning complete reality, only to discover within its complexities that its simplicities included seemingly unattainable features on Earth, such as love and compassion. Let's get it started. Joining me via Skype, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Australia is PhD in philosophy, Dr. Lynda Cramer. Dr. Cramer, welcome to Real Spiritual Talk Radio.
Thank you so much for having me, Lamont. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much.
And I thank you for coming on the show as well. I read your autobiographical account and found it to be very rich on the scale of near-death experience characteristics. I also understand that you even made it into the research of the great Dr. Raymond Moody. Is that so?
That's correct. I had this event back in 2001. I was living in North Carolina in the USA, and I returned to Australia in September of 2001, and there was no one to talk to about it. The internet was just new at that point, minimal information about my experience. I didn't even know what to call it at that point. So I was on Alta Vista, the old Alta Vista search engine. I was using that, and I was just putting in seeing angels after death and all these different keywords because I did not know the terminology of near-death experience. And I came across this article by Dr. Raymond Moody, and I thought, my gosh, he's explaining what's happened to me. So I found his email address, and him and I were actually contacting each other back and forward over about a 6-month period where he gave me the term near-death experience because he was the man who penned those 3 words. And he was absolutely in shock at what I was disclosing to him, because I don't think it's the fact that other people have had these experiences, because I've read about easy 5,000 near-death experience stories because I'm trying to fathom what happened to myself, obviously. But I think it was the time that I was up there and how long I was clinically dead for that people have the most interest, because even the doctors, they were in shock that once I woke up from my coma, I had no brain damage, mental incapacity, or other illnesses associated to oxygen not being received by the brain for so long. I've actually got my death certificate here that they wrote out, and it's called acute respiratory failure.
And that's precisely what I believe the audience is here for, to gather information on these deep transcendental experiences, especially if there is verification included. But before we get into your account, tell us what your earliest memory on the topic of religion and or spirituality was, or wasn't.
My mum tells a story that I was in hospital until I was about 2. In the 1960s, the doctors told my mum that I would need heart, lung and kidney transplants which back in the 60s, that was a death sentence because the technology didn't exist. My first memory is sitting on a bed. I'm looking down and I can see my nappy on, my diaper, as you would call it. And I've got plastic sheeting around the hospital bed. It goes from the ceiling down to the floor. When they pump in oxygen, you can hear it like a whistle. It's like the air coming in. So I remember that air sound. And I can see my mum through the plastic talking to a doctor. She's quite upset, by the way. But I remember sitting on this bed. I wasn't scared. I wasn't concerned. I was actually happy because I wasn't alone on the bed. There was 3 other people sitting on the bed with me. And I've said it to my mum over the years. I said, Mum, who was sitting with me on the bed? And she said, no one. There was no room in there for anyone to be in there because the plastic was right around your bed because you're in this oxygen tent for months. And I said, well, Mum, I really do remember 3 people sitting on the bed talking to me. And she said, well, who were they? And I said, I don't know. That's why I'm trying to find it out from you. And she said, well, what did they say? And I said, they kept reminding me, it's going to be okay. You're calm. Everything is going to be all right. You're going to get through this. Stop worrying about it. And they were so calm and relaxed that, even though I was such a child with, no experience or life skills to fathom what I was experiencing, but now as an adult in my 50s, I look back at that and I can only say if they weren't angels, they were my spirit guides, but they were some entity who have always been with me. My parents were both very religious. They could not fathom what I was doing. We'd go to parties and things with my parents as children, and they'd introduce me and my 2 sisters, and they'd say, oh, yes, this is Anne, this is Sharon, this is Lynda. Oh, don't worry about Lynda. She's got an avid imagination, or, oh, don't talk to Lynda, she's a freak. So I learned not to talk about it very much. I kept a lot of it to myself over the years because there was no support network for me. I had no one to talk to about it.
So your early beliefs stem from some sort of supernatural experience as a child, which segues perfectly into your later near-death experience. Why don't you tell us exactly what brought your near-death experience on?
Okay, I was married to my second husband. I'd come over to America and I was living in North Carolina in Concord, which is just outside of Charlotte. We got married in August 2000. So we had until August 2001 to lodge all my immigration paperwork. In about February, he came to me and said, I don't want to lodge your immigration paperwork. I want you to live here as an illegal immigrant, which scared the absolute heck out of me because in effect that, I wanted to get a green card so I could work and become a citizen of the US. I wanted to do my allegiance and to be patriotic to the USA. So I was willing to give up my heritage in Australia to create a life in America. He didn't want that. He just wanted me to virtually just stay at his house and be his housewife, which I didn't really agree with. So we ended up having some pretty extensive domestic violence issues. I ended up getting chronically ill, and I said to him, can you please take me to a doctor? And in America, as you would be aware, if you go to see a doctor, it's quite expensive. He didn't want to take me to a doctor. So on the night of the 6th of May, I went to bed absolutely. I was actually getting quite petrified, to be honest, knowing that we only had a couple of months to lodge my immigration. We had nothing filled out. I could face deportation. I could face other legal avenues, of being, brought up by citizenship, etc., if I didn't fill out this paperwork. So I remember waking up. It would have been about 2:00 in the morning, and it took me about 10 minutes to get to the toilet because I just could not breathe. You know, stress, it comes out in physical ways. So I remember going to the toilet, you know, how it's an embarrassment, you know, saying, oh, how did you die? And you say, well, I died on the toilet. But it's true. I remember sitting on the toilet and I just went to sleep. Now, my ex-husband, because he is my ex now, hello, he says that he heard me banging on the wall, which woke him up. I don't remember doing that because I went to sleep, and I also did not have the physical energy to bang that hard on a wall to wake him up, you know, because he was 2-3 rooms away. So whoever, because it is whoever, you know, another entity, spirit, angel, spirit guide, whoever you wish to call them, they have connected to him to wake me up, obviously. So he found me blue on the toilet. He's pulled me off the toilet and run to get the phone. So he's had to run back 3 rooms to get the phone because it was next to his bed. He's come back and dialed 911, and he commenced CPR on me during that time. The ambulances, which is what you call the EMS, emergency services, the sheriff turned up and the fire department all turned up. I know they all turned up because I saw them because I was floating in the living room near the front door. But I'll keep going with what he said, what happened, and also in my paperwork. The EMS came in and they established that I had no pulse and no breathing. They conducted CPR, so they took over from my husband who was already doing CPR. They detected a heartbeat after about 5 minutes. So they've stabilised me, put me on the gurney and put me into the ambulance and transported me over to the Cabarrus Hospital, which is now called the Atrium Hospital in Concord. I saw the whole thing because I was floating above one of the chairs in the living room. So when all the emergency services personnel turned up, I was just floating there, and I looked down and I could see the chair beneath me. And the weird thing was I had no feet. You know, that's something that, because I've researched so many other near-death experiences, it is a commonality where we look down and we don't have feet. And it didn't scare me. It was natural to have no feet. You know, just below my knees, it sort of just disappeared. It evaporated into nothing. So I watched this whole scene, and in my records, because I now have my medical records, the paramedics were in the house for 45 minutes. And I saw the whole thing. I saw the conversations. I heard the conversations. I saw all their name badges. So when I woke up after my coma, I actually was saying, oh, yeah, this man was in my house. And they were saying, how did you know he was there? And I said, because I saw his name badge on his shirt. So for that 45 minutes, I floated in the room. And then they left and they turned the lights off and they locked the front door. And that's when I tell people that it got weird. You know, like me floating in near the ceiling wasn't weird enough, because it was after that was when it got really weird.
So it sounds like you had an out-of-body experience. You're in the environment as an observer, yet at the same time outside of it. Walk us through what you experienced next.
Okay, I'll just go back to when I was floating, because this is something else that I've researched, and a lot of people do explain this. I was not breathing. It did not feel, it was very natural that I did not need to breathe, okay? I was not scared at all when I saw my body on the gurney getting carried out. There was no fear in me. It was total peace. It was like a euphoric feeling that I had, There was no worries or cares. You know, I wasn't thinking, oh, my God, I've got to wake up because I've got a bill to pay tomorrow. I've got to take the kids to school tomorrow. I've got to make my lunch for my husband to take to work. There was none of that. There was no fear of what was happening. So I have in my book, Heaven Exposed, I've got a diagram, which is like a floor plan of where I lived. So it shows where I was floating. When they all left, they closed the front door. And, you know, at like 3:30 in the morning, the whole house should have been in total darkness. But it actually wasn't. It was, you know, when you've got a light on in a different room and it emits that dim light into where you are? It was like that. So I'm still floating above the chair and the front door opened. Now, it was locked. You've got to remember here, the door was locked. But the front door opened and these blue Orby things floated in. Some of them were quite small, about 2 or 3 inch diameter. Others were about 6-8 inch diameter. And I could see through them. So it was like a football or a soccer ball round, but I could see through it. And in the middle, it was pure white energy and it sort of emitted out through them. And they were a very dark blue colour. And it was glitter and fluorescent at the same time. So it was alive. Whatever this colour was as part of these orbs, they were alive. And at the end, they had these like little sparkles. So these things all floated in and they're moving around me. They did not communicate with me at all. So I was just watching them. But I could tell that they were communicating with each other because they weren't hitting each other. They were like moving around each other. And it was like they were just investigating who I was type thing. Then all of a sudden, because they're all like moving, you know, because there was about 15 or 20 of them, they all just whoosh and went back out the door and the door shut. So there had to be some sort of communication there for them all to realise, oops, now we've got to go. So they left and the door shut. Then I call it what I call the fog stage. If you close your eyes and then open your eyes again, but now you're in a totally different location. There was no feeling of being moved, but I had moved to another location. I found myself in this field. There were flowers under my feet because I now had feet. There was people, hundreds of people walking around, buildings, mountains, sky with clouds, architecture like I cannot explain. The whole area was very panoramic. Everything was connected. I could hear the mountains and I could smell the people kilometres away. I knew everything that everyone was thinking because we were all one. There was no, oh my gosh, who's that lady over there? Because I knew who she was. You know everything about everything, that knowing of everything. So I looked down at these flowers underneath me. You know, I say it all the time, the colour, I cannot explain the colour. Very bright and vibrant. They were living. So I looked down at these flowers and instantly I knew what they were thinking. We can't fathom it in our three-dimensional world. So as I took a step to walk, the flower stem, where the flower was on the top of it, the whole stem moved so I wouldn't squash it. So not only did they know what I was thinking to move because they knew that my foot was going to come down, but they could also have a consciousness of their own where they could think about what to do. So I stayed in this place for, 8 months in time. But time is not relevant up there. There's no time. So I was talking to this lady, and when I first met her, I walked up to her and I said, hello, because we know everything. She had on this medieval long flowing dress, reminiscent of the 1400s. It had the long sleeves and, the headwear that they have on their heads and all the hair's up in a bun. And as she walked away, she instantly changed into someone from like the 1960s with a very short flower power miniskirt on, and now she had a short black bob hairstyle. So what we think, we create. So she instantly put out this intention of, I'm going to change my clothes, and boom, it did it. And then I get this tap on the shoulder, and it's a woman. And as I turned around, I go back into like this fog stage where you blink and you open your eyes again and you're somewhere else. So in hindsight, I think she was saying, hey, you've been here long enough, it's time to see the next part. So I now find myself in like this church situation, and I'm standing in front of these three beings. So the one in the middle, he would have been about, or she, who, there was no sex, so I'll just say it. It was about 15 feet tall, and the two on either side of it were about 12 foot tall. The energy, they had no body, but they were energy, and it was coming up from the ground. And as it got into where the head is, because I could see the shoulders, but as it went into the head, it was swirling both clockwise and anti-clockwise at the same time. It was this swirling ball of energy. They did not talk to me, but it was telepathic knowing is what I call it, telepathic knowing. It was massive building. So I knew that I had to look into this box in front of me. And this box, it did have energy coming out of it. I lifted the lid off this box, and inside there was no walls or floor. It was eternal. So I look inside there, and there are millions, and I mean millions, of these like bubbles. And inside each one was a video of a memory of mine. So as I'm looking into all these thousands upon thousands upon thousands of these little white energy balls, like balloons, I knew, which was a direction from those three beings that I was with, I knew what I had to do. I had to pick one out, and I had to relive that memory and judge myself why I did what I did in that memory. So I picked one out. It was a memory of when I would have been about 5 years old. I was at my grandmother's house. She had a white Persian cat. And in this memory, I'm pulling the tail of this cat. So as soon as I start thinking about this memory, instantly I am now the cat, and I'm feeling the pain caused to me from this human, which was me, in another, because I'm now the cat. So instantly I'm the cat getting my tail pulled, and I could feel the pain coming down my tail, going up into my spine. I got filled with that fear of, what are you hurting me for? And it hit me tenfold. You know, they say in the Bible, it will be returned tenfold. The fear was 10 times worse than if someone just pulled my tail. So here I am in this place holding this little bubble. I'm watching this memory, and I'm crying my eyes out because I'm so sad, because I had been the one to cause all that pain and that anxiety and that frustration to this cat. So then I knew, just from this knowing, that I had to forgive myself for what I'd done to the cat.
Sounds like these entities set your life review in motion.
Absolutely. It was my life review. Yes. And it was Dr. Raymond Moody who told me the word life review. So, people ask me all the time about this part, because this is the part that people mostly want to talk about, my life review. Our actions do stay as an energy frequency that we must correct when we pass over and go back to home, because I don't call it heaven, I call it home, because that's where we're all from. So what happens is when we're like nasty, or we swear at somebody, or we attack someone or abuse someone, or even deliberately trip someone over, like in a prank, we have to relive that, but from the perspective of the other person, and judge ourselves why we wanted to hurt them. Because then the process of this forgiveness, once we acknowledge what we've done and we recognize that behavior or the words or whatever we did, then we can forgive ourselves, which is virtual releasing that pain, and it also cleanses that pain from the other person.
So take us past the life review. What did you encounter next?
So as I was there for, I don't know how long, months, I get this tap on my shoulder again. And as I'm about to turn around, I'm back in this fog stage. And when I realise where I am, I'm in this room, but there's no walls or ceiling, and there's no floor. Everything is white. And I look down at my feet and I'm not standing on anything. It's just all white. And over in the distance, I could see a woman standing there. And as she walked towards me, she was getting bigger because there was no floor. And she comes up to me and she says, "What are you doing here?" And I looked at her and I said, "I don't know where I am. Where am I?" She said, "You're not supposed to be here." I said, "Well, where's here?" She said, "Well, you've got to go back." And I said, "Well, where do I go back to? Because I don't know where I am." She sort of calms down a little bit and she says, "Oh, look, I am Karina. I am your great-great-great-great-grandmother." She gave me extreme details of her life. She was born in the early 1800s. She lived here in Australia. She was one of the early settlers here in Australia. She told me everything about where she lived, how they made the house, how they caught a horse to train it, to break it in so it wasn't a wild horse anymore. That process alone there would have gone for days and days and days of how she explained it. So she ended up saying, "Look, you've got to go back." And she said, "Lynda, I'm going to tell you something. In your future, there is certain things that are going to happen." She said, "You're going to work with the police for 10 years. And I just started laughing. I said, "Oh, me with all my health issues? I'm not going to work anywhere near the police. They won't want me. I'll never pass a physical." She said, "Well, you will be." She said, 2 years after that, you'll be a first aid trainer for 2 years. And I was thinking, what? I don't know anything about medical stuff. I don't even know, anything about needles or anything, even though I've been in hospital a few times. She said, "Well, Lynda, it will happen." And she told me other information as well. In fact, a lot of things she told me, because I was there talking to her for so long about this stuff. So then she says, "Look, if you go into there," and she's pointing past me, she said, "if you go in there, you will not be able to return to your life." So I've turned around, but there's this tunnel. It was black and there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I could see it was pure white, but it didn't hurt my eyes. And it was rotating left and right at the same time, clockwise, anti-clockwise. And it was all energy. The whole thing was energy coming in and out of it. The weirdest thing was, as soon as I looked at it, I got like this magnetic pull where I wanted to go into it. And she pulled me up and she said, Lynda, you can't go in there. If you go into there, you will never go back to your body. And I said to her, what is this? Because I just want to go into this thing now. Wow, it's beautiful. You know, I'm just so attracted to it. You know, like a moth to a flame. I just want to go into it. It's like this magnetic pull. And she explained it to me. She said, if you go into there, you will be reborn. You will have a new life contract. And you can't go through that new life contract until you have cleared the life contract that you've done in this existence, because you hadn't completed the previous part. She said you can only go into that tunnel once you go through that life review. So she told me the word life review. You've got to pass through that life review stage so you are a cleaned, healed person. So then when you go into there, you then can decide under free will which life lessons you want to learn in your next existence.
So you're saying that the lives we are living here on Earth are based on prearranged agreements concerning the lessons we chose to learn prior to coming here, and that reincarnation is the pathway.
Absolutely. You know, people ask me all the time, what are our life lessons? And I say, well, it's not to be rich, it's not to be poor. Our life lessons are our attributes, things like caring, compassion, understanding, generosity, how to be giving. If you have a contract where you've said one of your lessons wants to be understanding, they may create you a life where you are rich, where you then can give understanding to homeless people. You may be able to give understanding to marine animals and understanding pollution and how to eradicate it. But then on the other hand, they may make you that homeless man. They may make you that whale getting stuck in fishnets. They may make you to be that ocean that is polluted. So then you can understand why it's such a bad thing. So we can't judge ever why our life is the way it is. All we can do is try and work out the lessons that we've got to learn while we're in this existence.
And these seem to be the core lessons many come back with after having a near-death experience. So tell us, what was it like coming back into your body, if that was the next phase after speaking with your great-great-grandmother?
After talking to her, she said, you've got to go back now. Time's up. And I said, well, I don't know how to do it. And she said, all you've got to do is think about it. So I started thinking about the night that I died, because it was like 5 years before, because I'd been up there for so long. I started thinking about the pajamas that I was wearing, the toilet where I was sitting. And all of a sudden, I feel this pain, because I hadn't felt pain for 5 years because we don't have muscles up there. I'm getting this pain and it's excruciating in my arm. And I can hear a lady say, Lynda, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. And I've still got my eyes shut at this point. So I'm squeezing with my left hand. And I can hear this woman say, my God, she's really squeezing me. She's coming back. So then I tried to open my eyes, and I could see that this was one of those blood pressure black tubey things around my arm that was, it constricts so it hurts. And then as I opened my eyes, they're pulling this tube out of my throat. Oh my gosh, not really the first thing I wanted to see. Welcome back to life.
I know you already mentioned your early experiences with supernatural occurrences, but do you believe your near-death experience strengthened any of these abilities during your after effects?
Absolutely. The week after I got home, it was a constant. It did not stop. I would know who was walking at the end of the street, and I'd know what clothes they had on. I knew where the birds were in the area. I knew what cars, like we were on a long road and it had a bend in it so you couldn't see the connection road at the end. But I'd know what cars were driving past, and I'd know what radio station they were listening to. I'd know the clothes. I'd know what was wrong with the cars because the cars were telling me this guy needs oil in the car. This guy needs to put air in his tyres. So it was very insane what I was going through. You know, some days I am so in tune, other days I'm just average with it, but it's never left me. I sometimes dream the lotto numbers, you know, so I go up and put them in and I've won thousands of dollars where thank you so much for giving me last night's lotto numbers, you know. So they do help me with with physical stuff, material things, but that's not important to them. What is important to the universe, like God and the archangels or whoever you wish to pray for with your belief or your religion, whoever that person or entity is, they only want the best for you, the best compassion, the best understanding, the best patience, how to be productive, how to live a better life in graciousness, appreciation. They don't care if you've got the best latest car. They don't care if you've got to buy another yacht. They just want you, ultimately, to feel that love and to share it with others.
And I would guess that this would be the overarching lesson you've learned from your near-death experience for those here to understand.
Absolutely. Think about what is really important, that quality rather than the quantity of things that we possess. You know, think about the humbleness of my situation where I now come out and I say, I don't care how rich or poor you are. If you come to me genuine, honest, someone I can trust, you are valuable to me because you are being your true self.
And it really came through with your account today. Well, Dr. Cramer, I want to thank you for coming on Real Spiritual Talk Radio and sharing with us your extremely informationally rich account.
Thank you so much for having me, Lamont.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lynda Cramer. And I want to thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Real Spiritual Talk Radio. Please catch me on Facebook. There you will find past shows and other relevant near-death experience information on Real Spiritual Talk Radio. Once again, I am always highly enlightened by these particular near-death experience accounts as they tell us more about clinical death and the disattachment and survival of consciousness. And I thank you once again for tuning in. And on that note, this has been Real Spiritual Talk Radio, and I am your host, Lamont Gates, now signing off.